Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on Herculean Physique, I am with Ryan Foley, and Ryan has a lot of wisdom to share with us today. Greetings, Will Ryan. How you doing?
I'm doing good, sir. How are you? It's good to talk to you again.
Good to talk to you too. I'm doing well, and I'm glad to hear that you're doing well.
Well, so I was thinking before we really get started here in earnest, yeah, so we've been on YouTube here for a little while now. Uh, but as Stanley always said, every comic is someone's first comic. And so more than likely, this is probably someone's first video where they're coming in and they're getting introduced to us. And so I think this would be a good opportunity to explain to people just real briefly who you are and why you're doing all these video series with all the different guests that you get to have come on.
Um, I'm Hercules Invictus. My career has been mostly in the human services and education and entertainment. I've had a very interesting career, and avocationally, I studied the esoteric and the paranormal and the fringe, and I always have, and I guess for while I'm here, I always will. And I am an advocate of the heroic traditions that transcend culture and time period. And I've tried to do as much good as I can in the world through my daily activities. Nothing phenomenally visible. I think the most visible thing I've done is The Age of Heroes, where I'll pick a social problem and then I'll try to inspire other people to join me on an adventure to do what we can. And often that sparks things off, and other people are able to do greater things after that. These conversations are because I've met a lot of very interesting people who represent a certain perspective and have a lot of information on a particular topic that I consider important. And through our conversations, we hope that other people will listen and think and come to their own conclusions. We're not folks who are getting together trying to sell you a particular way of living or a particular way of processing life, uh, but just to question, to find your dreams, to find your strengths, and to pursue those things to the best of your ability, and to add to your quality of life and to the quality of life of your family, of your friends, of your community, and of the greater world around you.
Fantastic.
And you,
No, that's fantastic, man. That was really good.
well, thank you.
Um, so just to share real quickly for everyone, hi, my name is Ryan. So Hercules and I got connected together because I am an author, and I did a variety of graphic novels based upon Greek myth, and so it was a unique opportunity for us to go through and find this connection. And so as a result, after we had kind of exhausted my catalog of the things that I had created, uh, Hercules found out that I've been transforming myself in the gym since 2014. So I've been doing that for 12 years. And so this allowed us, it was something else that we had in common. And so we decided to go through and have conversations. And very much like Hercules said, we're not here to sell you anything. We're just trying to go through. And the way I always try to think of it of, Herc, it's you and me, and we're going to sit down. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to have a protein shake, and we're going to talk about the workouts that we've been doing. And so the whole goal is to go through and elevate everyone's gym IQ, so that way they can go through, kind of understand the gym a little bit better, because it does. Whenever you're just getting started, man, it takes anywhere from realistically between 1 to 3 years to figure out what's going on and how everything all works. And so honestly, going through and being a part of this community that I've been with here for 12 years, I've gone through, I've rebuilt my life from the ground up. I've gone through a divorce. I've raised 3 kids, and I'm a New York Giants fan, so I know all about suffering. I know about pain, and I know about hardship. But I can honestly say that yes, the bodybuilding has been one of the hardest things I've ever been a part of. Um, but at the same time, it's also been some of the most rewarding. So the biggest thing that I want people to come away from with these conversations is that there's more than enough seats at the table. This is not a zero-sum game. Your success does not inhibit my success by any stretch of the imagination. So I want to help people. I want to be able to reach back because this journey that we're all going on is very, very difficult. And so if we can come along, not deliver cheat codes, but just make that journey a little bit easier, then you're more likely to stick with it. You're more likely to stay hooked up with a program if you can find a way to go through and use that encouragement. So if I can make other people's journeys a little bit shorter, man, I'm all for it.
And that's why I admire you and I respect you greatly. Because for years you have so generously shared your journey. And again, without trying to sell a particular way of doing things is the one and only true way of doing things. And we are like gym buddies. And in fact, my wife brought me a protein shake to drink before our show tonight. I just finished my protein shake.
Very important. Well, so what I'm hoping to get through, and so we don't really do a whole lot of prep whenever it comes to these shows, and that's kind of what makes it fun. I've got a little bit of a list here just because I do want to bring specific information in, but a lot of times I think we operate best whenever it's just you and I just kind of talking and going through stuff. But so the three main topics that I want to talk about tonight, one rep max calculators, which I think are very important, real world applications through practical exercises, and then a way to shock your muscles and switch up your routine by just doing one set. It's a somewhat of a strange idea, but if you go through and you embrace it, I think it's something that can go through and help you out with your routines. So first of all, so let me just break out here and we'll talk about one rep max calculators. So these are very easy to find. I'm not going to go through and promote one website or another. If you go through and you just do a Google search, you're going to find a variety of them there that are all going to be listed up. And then you can choose whichever one you like best. But essentially what there's this unique biological math. And so I discovered this a couple of years ago, which I thought was really cool, where so basically if you're really putting in the effort, if you go through, say, with like a single arm exercise and you can achieve 12 reps, that's where it's time to go up by 5 pounds. And what you'll find is that you're going to go through and you're going to drop off by about 4 more reps. And so the idea is once you can get to 12, then you go up by 5 pounds. You're naturally going to drop back to 8. And then you start working until you can get to 12 reps again. And then once you can do that, then it's time to go up 5 more pounds. And the whole process just kind of repeats itself. So this is what they call progressive overload. And that's how you go through and you improve yourself. But with bodybuilding, I think there's this common misconception that we're out here and we're really pushing around just this tremendous amount of weight. And I've found that hasn't really been the case, at least not for me, because what I'm attempting to do is I'm attempting to build health and durability as opposed to just raw strength. So for me, it's more about let's go through, let's lift it with form, let's lift it with surgical precision. And in order to do that, you kind of have to go through and drop the weight. So I think people might be surprised whenever they see me working out and I'm only using something as light as a 20-pound dumbbell sometimes, because I'll burn you out with a 20-pound dumbbell. But so the problem, I work out solo. So I don't have a spotter. And so sometimes if you're working with very heavy weight, that can be dangerous. And so also, every time I've ever gotten hurt, it's because of ego lifting. It's going through and just trying to push myself to the absolute maximum. So instead, what these scientists have done, they've gone through and they've calculated these one rep maxes. And so essentially what you do is you go in and you plug in the amount of weight that you've done and how many reps that you've done. And then it will go through and it will give you a calculated one rep max. And ever since I've switched over and started using these, again, I've never gotten hurt. And so my recommendation would be for people that are going to go through and use these things, I would try to lift what I would call manageable heavy. And so the fewer the reps that you can do, probably the more accurate those calculations are going to be. You'll even see like some of the websites, they don't even get you to list. You can't go through and list an unlimited number of reps. So if you're doing something around with a rep range of 15 to 20, those numbers might not be that accurate. But if you're going through and you're only lifting, say, anywhere from a rep range of 5 to 7, then those numbers are probably going to be pretty accurate. It's a little bit safer for you to go through and do a calculated 1 rep max. Again, if you're throwing your ego out of it, by going through and using that, I think you're going to find it's a much safer way to go through and do it. And so it's just, to me, it's a smarter way of thinking. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people kind of take for granted, is that they think we're just a bunch of lunkheads going through in here and picking up heavy weight and setting it back down. And what I've found is that that's really not the case. It is a specific science. And that science is what it attracted me initially to it. And the more that I got to develop into that science, the more fascinated I was with it.
Yeah, I experimented with the 1 rep max and the 1 set max philosophies when I was younger. And they became something I'd switch to occasionally because your body gets used to whatever you're doing, whether it's diet or exercise, and then you hit a plateau where it seems that despite anything you do, nothing happens. So you need to break the plateau. And I found that doing the opposite of what you're doing sometimes helps you break through the plateau. And that's when I used to experiment with those. I don't remember. It was Mike Menser who recommended one or the other or both. I don't. It's been years since I studied those ways of doing things. But I had great benefit using those occasionally to bust plateaus or to push past a certain more temporary stuck point.
And it's funny that you mentioned him because he's in my notes.
Uh-huh.
But we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. But the important thing that I want people to remember. So I discovered this thing. It's called the SAID principle, SAID. And so the SAID stands for specific adaptation to imposed demands. And so the fancy way of what the SAID principle is that training must be precisely tailored to the desired outcome, sport, or movement patterns to produce optimal adaptations. So that's a real fancy way of saying you have to train for what you're training for. And so because I've gone through and I've changed my training strategy where I'm more about now, I'm more concerned with building endurance as opposed to and building adaptability so that way I can stay healthy. I'm less concerned with how much I'm actually lifting as a heavy weight. So it's strength is almost kind of like this byproduct where it's like I'm more interested in going through and keeping my body safe and keeping it healthy as opposed to how much I can lift. So whenever I was lifting really heavy, the most that I ever got to was 301 pounds with a barbell bench press for a 1 rep max. And that's where I kind of paused out because I was on this mission. I wanted to join the 1,000-pound club. And so the 1,000-pound club, that's where you're doing 1,000 pounds across 3 different exercises: the bench press, the deadlift, and the squat. And so once I had achieved that level, I was like, okay, well, 300 pounds is pretty much enough for me, or 300 allowed me to break into that area. And then I never really wanted to go beyond that because I just wasn't concerned with the strength. So I went through and I did, again, put 225 on just to see how many reps I could get. And so I had a calculated 1 rep max of 270 pounds. And that was here just a couple of weeks ago. So I was for a little bit there. I was kind of disappointed because like, oh well, I feel like my strength has fallen off, but that's also because I haven't been training heavy for the longest time. And so again, if we enact the SAID principle, if you're going to lift for a maximum amount of weight, you need to be training to lift for a maximum amount of weight. Now, could I go through and could I get those numbers back? Yeah, I think that I could. I don't think that my skills have fallen off that much. I would just have to change my training style. But as of right now, that training style is counterproductive to wanting to go through and lose fat and develop my endurance instead of going through and developing my strength. So I'm just curious, Hercules, in your experience, how have you decided to go through and shift where you want to do more raw strength? Or when do you want to do more endurance? Or do you switch it? Did you find yourself switching back and forth? Or was there one goal that you always wanted to consistently follow?
There was never one rule because I like experimenting, and I read something that I want to see, if it's something that could benefit me, because different techniques work for different people at different times and then don't work at other times. So you never know what it's going to be. Like, you had recommended these ascending and descended pyramids at one time, and for like over a year and a half, that became the rage with me because I was getting such good results from them. And then it stopped working, I was able to maintain where I'd gotten, but it wasn't going anywhere. So I switched at that time. I used to, when I was younger, get into the really heavy weights. My all-time highest bench press was 330, and I was able to do it for a set. I didn't do the one rep thing with the weights. And I don't remember deadlift. I think I was in the seven hundreds for a couple of reps, and squats I don't remember. Leg presses, I still love leg presses, and there it was well over 1,000. I used to have people sitting on the machine while I leg press. They used to warm up with over 400 on each leg individually, and then I used to handle the heavier weights. In retrospect, being almost 70 now, and having spinal arthritis and other issues, I think if I going back to do it over again, I love bodybuilding, weightlifting, strength training, whatever you want to call it, and I wouldn't give that up for anything. But I think the more ego parts of it, where I was trying to tackle great strength, whether it's in the weight room or with objects in life, as you're going to get into, like helping people move. And I used to carry big furniture downstairs whenever we moved, and I wouldn't be doing that as much had I known that it might have an effect on me. And again, I've talked to doctors. I don't know if it actually did have an effect. My spinal arthritis might be due to something totally different, but it's the only thing I could think of in life. My handling of heavy weights throughout my adult life, and to some extent before my adult life, it could have caused such things. But right now, as and everyone who listens to the show knows, I've been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So I have issues to deal with those challenges too. But weight training is one of the ways that some people have found to deal with the Parkinson's and to triumph over a certain aspect of Parkinson's. So delighted when I heard that, because now I can indulge my passion. And actually now I exercise more. I exercise 3 to 5 times a day because it helps with my Parkinson's. So it's become a bigger priority than it was before.
Well, so you've touched on something there that I think is important for people to keep in mind. And I'm a firm believer in that comparison is the thief of joy. To go through and compare yourself to other people, I think can be detrimental because we don't know their story. We don't know everything that they've gone through. We don't know their advantages and their disadvantages as well. But so there's an interesting group of statistics out there that says the average male barbell bench press is 135 pounds, and the average female bench press is 75 pounds. But so if we're taking the general population, 60% of those people are considered untrained. And so again, these are the people. So these untrained individuals, they're the ones with the bench press of 135 pound for men and 75 pound for women. But for someone who is technically considered trained, and trained is usually where you're reaching about the third year in the gym. So if you're considered trained, they have an average bench press of 220 pounds for men and 105 pounds for women. Only 3 to 4% of the male general population has a 225-pound one rep max when it comes to a barbell bench press. So if you've ever had a barbell bench press heavier than 225 pounds, you're doing better than 97% of the population. So if you think about it in that level, I mean, so it is a very elite group that you're working with. And so now there's a lot of different factors that have to go into that, as far as, how much they weigh and as a whole host of things. But so again, if you're going through and you're getting close to those numbers, and so again, maybe that's your goal. Maybe you want to be within that 3 to 4%. Okay, so you've got to get to 225. If you get to 225, that's it. You're better than, or I don't like that term better. You're performing at a higher level than, again, 96% of the population. But I don't want people to go out there and get themselves hurt as a result of going through. And so now these are calculated 1 rep maxes. So you can go through and you don't necessarily have to lift the 225, but you can go through and you can lift, something that's lighter, more manageable, 190 pounds, but you're lifting that for 4 reps. And there's a pretty good chance that that's going to put you up at over 225. So again, it's giving you that goal to shoot for. It's that constant sense of improvement. But I do think that you make that mistake if you're going through and you're comparing yourself. Well, how come this guy's over here and he's able to do this? But again, we don't know his story. We don't know what all he's been through. And so don't compare yourselves to other people. But I don't like that. But I do like the statistics part, where if you can go through and be like, hey, I'm doing better than, if you're just getting started. Again, 60% of the people are considered untrained. So if you're going through and you're getting those strength levels up into even a novice area, you're still doing better. I think we want to go through and we want to try to work it as like a grading system, as far as like A, B, and C. And I think that's a mistake, where it's more along the lines of the percentage. So again, once you get into that 4%, if you're doing better than 96%, I mean, that's a great goal, I think, to try to achieve, because again, it gives you something to shoot for. But it's important to remember where you're ranking. If they go through and they took 100 people all your age and lined them all up, how much, how are you doing compared to all those other people, as opposed to one person specifically? But again, hey, if I'm in the 80th percentile, then you should be very happy with yourself.
And thank you for giving me those facts, because I'm handling very light weights now. I'm doing uh, basically lighter weights with more reps and more sets. But 225, 250, those used to be my warm-up weights when I got to 3. So I'm thinking that if I once had that as a warm-up weight, then if I start going to the gym at some point, when my balance is improved, I have a belief that I could make the 200s again, definitely. So,
It's just going through and adapting that training style. And I think in order to do that, there's ways to go through and, as you said, to kind of test your system. So I noticed the other day, so there was a commercial that was circulating around on the internet. I'd seen it a long time ago, and it involves this gentleman, an older gentleman who's clearly in his grandpa era, and he's working out with a kettlebell. And like the neighbor walks by and sees him in the garage, and she looks at him all strange because can't figure what he's doing. So he's doing these deep squats, and he's going through and he's picking up the kettlebell, and then he's raising it above his head, and then he's going through and setting it back down. So he's doing this, and in the course of the commercial, like they branched through a couple of seasons. So I mean, so he's really got, so he's consistently improving, and his weight keeps going up. And then they get to the end of the commercial, and sure enough, it's Christmas time, and his little granddaughter comes running in, and he goes through and picks her up so that way she can put the star on the top of the Christmas tree.
oh,
And yeah, so like, oh man, just the bad thing is I can't tell you what the commercial was for. I remember the ad, but I don't know what it was for. So it's like, okay, the marketing failed just a little bit there. But it's going through and it's giving you your why, as to why you're going through and doing these things. And if you can go through and establish that why of why you're wanting to do this, I would say do it for yourself first. But it's nice to go through and sprinkle a little dash in there to give you for motivation. And so for me, it's about wanting to stay healthy for my kids, to be able to move around and not have them, not being dependent upon anyone else. And so it's just going through so I'm going through and I'm doing these exercises to hopefully go through and improve things for me in my real life.
mhm.
So we've talked in here before about how I go through and I like to use antagonistic sets. And then, so what I would do is I would finish those 2 sets back to back. And then I'm trying to keep my heart rate elevated so that way I can go through and I can burn more fat. And so what I started doing is I started doing laps around the gym, if it wasn't crowded, so that way I'm not taking over a couple pieces of machine or of equipment and people are waiting to use it, all that sort of stuff. So just being cognizant of my fellow gym goers out there. So it started with me going through and doing laps around the gym, and the gym was 100 laps, or I'm sorry, was 100 steps. So I started to figure that out pretty quickly. And so then I went through and wanted to increase the degree of difficulty. So I start carrying weights. And so it started out with just, 10-pound plates. And then I went to 25-pound plates. And unfortunately for my gym, there's no 35-pound plates for whatever reason. It goes from 25 to 45. So I've been experimenting by going through and using the dumbbells instead to carry them. But now what I've started doing is I've shifted over to where I'm just doing a single carry. And so instead what that does, so it's kind of a 2-for-1 thing. I'm going through, I'm burning a little bit more energy. So that way it's, my calorie count is high. But then at the same time, anytime that you do an exercise where things are off balance, and this also applies if you're doing any sort of press over your head. So your core then has to engage in order to keep your body from falling over. So what I started doing is I started carrying just one dumbbell in one hand and then making the circuit. I would actually make 2 circuits and then I just switch the dumbbell. Or if I was going really heavy halfway through, I'd change hands. And essentially what I figured what I was doing here is I'm carrying in the groceries. It's kind of the same way. It's that same thing. And so now when I carry in the groceries, I can't decide if it's less lazy or more lazy, but it's one trip. We're just doing the one trip. And so I'll go through and carry everything in all in one shot. And I'm doing that because I'm going through and I'm applying this style. It's the same reason why if my riding lawnmower runs out of gas, I can go through and I can push that thing like a sled to get it to where I can go through and I can refuel it. So it's going through and finding these original things. So I found this new exercise, which it was just, I had a lot of fun with it, if I'm being honest. And that's the other thing that I want people to, this should be a joyous experience for people. You should really be having fun whenever you're in there. And I do, and I am. So again, I'm on TikTok just to show you where the idea comes from. It was not my idea. I blatantly stole this thing. So if this works for you, please go through and do that for you as well. So there's this guy and the video comes on and he's going through and he's lifting this plate and he's lifting it up onto his shoulder. And so he's doing these reps. So it's a deep squat and then he's going through and he's picking the weight up and he's putting it here. And then they cut to him in a cosplay outfit where he is cosplaying as Rick O'Connell from the Mummy movie series. Okay. And then he's got his partner and she is dressed as Evie, also from the Mummy. And if you go back and you watch those movies again, Rick O'Connell has this maneuver where he goes through and he picks Evie up, throws her over his shoulder, caveman style, and then walks out of the room. And so then they cut. So they show him training. So this is what he's training for. It's a little bit, it's not quite as heartfelt as the grandpa lifting the kid up to put the star on. But then he goes through and he's caveman slinging this girl over his shoulder and then walking out of the room. So it was really funny. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. So I just started doing this weekend because it was WrestleMania weekend. And by the time I get done watching Raw tonight, I will have watched 22 and a half hours of professional wrestling since Friday. And let me just say, time well spent. It was absolutely great. I love pro wrestling and I love their physiques and they're an inspiration for me. So in my gym, I use a public gym and they have a space in the back called the dungeon. It's what I call it. I call it the dungeon because no air conditioning, no climate control. It's very gritty and this is where they throw all the old equipment and stuff like that. But it's also, there's a pretty good chance you're going to be in there by yourself. And so if I'm doing a brand new exercise, I kind of don't want people to see me until I can go through and I can get it figured out. And so I tried to deal with the plate and I was like, okay, this is all right. But it just didn't have the right feel. I was like, wait a minute, they got those tires in there. And I kind of tried with that, but it was a little big. It was kind of awkward. And then I saw, wait, they have the punching bags and they have the one of them that's laying there, the big heavy bags that you use for boxing. So I was just curious. I took this thing out and I go through and I weigh it, and it's 65 pounds. I break my phone out and I go through and I scan it, and sure enough, it's 3 foot tall. So I go through, and again, it's a deep squat. So we're getting a good exercise there. And then I'm practicing on throwing this thing up on my shoulder and then proceeded to walk for 50 steps. And I was still trying to figure out how to do my pattern. Then I'd go through and I'd throw the bag down. It's a big, giant, heavy bag. So who cares? So I'm throwing it down there and it's slamming on the mats and all that sort of stuff. And so again, it's WrestleMania weekend. So it's like, well, okay, there's no one in here. It's no one to see me. So I go through and I take this thing. As in fact, tonight I'm repping family above all. I'm repping the tribal chief.
Awesome.
But my favorite wrestler of all time is John Cena, and John Cena has a finishing maneuver. Well, it's one of his maneuvers is called the AA, the Attitude Adjustment, and in that he goes through. He takes his opponent, lifts them up in like a fireman's carry across his shoulders, and then proceeds to lift them up and he slams them down onto the mat. And so I was like, I wonder if I could do this with this giant heavy bag. And so I go through and I try it, and sure enough, I can. So what I have determined is that if my opponent is 3 foot tall and weighs 65 pounds, so a third grader, totally reckon that third grader. I said I'll go through it all and I'll put him through the mat and everything will be fantastic. But I mean, but again, it was fun. And so I come out from that, and so again, my abs are killing me, my legs are killing me. But it was going through and finding that new exercise was so exciting for me. The biggest problem that I had with it is that the bag is fairly unwieldy. It's not that it's too heavy, it's just it doesn't have the straps and the handles that they make. And so of course I'm logging into Amazon. I'm going, okay, we'll do, and they do have these giant sandbags in these nylon bags that you can buy and fill, and then you can go through and start slinging these things around. And so there's a part of me that's kind of like, well, I wonder if I could get something like that here for here at the house, just because it was a very unique way to go through and develop those practical muscles. And so I'm just curious if you have any sort of exercises or different equipment that you've used that gave you that same level of excitement that this simple throwing around a bag was for me.
I used to do that all the time, and I still do it to some extent. Right now, my balance is very bad, so I don't want to throw myself off balance. Sometimes just carrying a cup of coffee up the flight of stairs will get me like totally unbalanced, and I'll need my wife to bring it up or my son to bring it up for me. But throughout my life, and still as much as I can do it now, I'll think in terms of reps and sets for just about everything I'm doing. So when I used to, again, move things from our moves or from a friend's move, I would calculate like, okay, this is a partial squat, it's a full squat, it's what type of exercise I was doing, and then I would add reps and make sets out of them because my brain would continuously calculate that. And again, I still do that to whatever degree I can currently do it. Also, when I had my Fringe television show, I used to try a lot of new things. Like back then, before there were cameras all over the place, people used to have Highlander fights with real swords in the park at night. So I had my big barbarian sword. So I got this guy who was involved with that to train me, and I was going to fight sword fights with real swords in the park. But that never happened because I think the people running got busted or something. But I trained for a while. We filmed him training me, and then I was going to be a professional wrestler for a while, and I had an agent, Dangerous Johnny Diamond was his name, and I had a friend, the Bulldog. I don't remember his full name, but my story was going to be like a Captain America story. They found me frozen in ice, and
Oh, cool.
I didn't know the niceties of this day and age. So I start off being like a villain, but then something happens and my heroic self wakes up and I switch sides and, become a champion of good. So we'd worked all this thing out, but again, it just didn't happen. And I discovered that a lot of things, didn't happen. And I was training in a couple of gyms. One of the gyms was a gym where, Arnold and Lou Ferrigno had trained when they were in that part of the city. So, I had that. So I used to film my training sessions. And so I had a lot of fun. Even when things didn't happen, it was a chance to do a new routine and Yeah, so I always delighted in things like that, and I could feel the excitement as you described what you've discovered, and that's a great thing.
And going through, and again, finding ways to go through and make it fun, so that way you're going through and you're enjoying yourself. Because what we're doing, so you have used an expression a couple of times that I mean, I've gone through and I've adopted it in my own life, which is where, again, things work until they don't.
Mhm.
And then once they don't, now we have to go through and we have to find a way to change things. So, typically they say on average it's between 8 to 12 weeks. About every 8 to 12 weeks, you should go through and kind of change up your training style. And so we've talked on here before about, okay, so maybe you need to do a deload phase where you can go through and you ratchet down the intensity just a little bit. But what you're doing is you're taking one step back in order to make a running leap forward. And so every once in a while, going through and train and changing that training style. Again, we're not talking about tearing everything down, but just going through and choosing kind of a different way to go through and attack things. And so again, talking about Mike Menser. So again, this. So if you look at his body of work, nice. He he obviously he knew what he was talking about for his training style for what he wanted to achieve. Not necessarily, it's not going to work for everyone. You could do the exact same thing, the exact same exercise, the exact same weight. You may not necessarily end up looking like him. But so what you can do is you can take kind of basically the core concepts. And so he believed in this heavy duty, high intensity approach where if you go through and you do a bench press and you still have enough energy to be able to do a second set, then you weren't pushing hard enough. So he was really all about going through and exhausting those muscles. And some people say it's not a good idea. There's going to be, hey, you can come up with anything and someone's going to come up with a counter for it as to say why you're wrong. But so back in this is long time ago, we're talking like 30 plus years. So I played high school football, and the way that our program was set up, people said, I have no military experience, so I can't verify this, but other people have said if you could survive 8 Air 2-a-days, you could survive basic training for the Army because it was a very intense program. But one of our mindsets was always going to be, we're going to beat you in the fourth quarter. And we're going to beat you in the fourth quarter because we are going to out condition you. So it was wind sprints, man, so many wind sprints in the lead up to the season. But then the coaches always made a deal with us. Okay, as long as you don't lose, for every week of the season, we'll go through and we'll knock one of the 10 wind sprints off. So if you go through and you have an undefeated season for that last week of the regular season, you got one wind sprint and that's it. And then we all get to go home. So it was part of our motivation to go through and hey, because it wasn't because we wanted to win for the team or it wasn't because we wanted to win for the city. It was because we didn't want to run. And so that was an even greater motivation for us because like, man, well, I don't have to do all those wind sprints. So I kind of went through and I'm adopting that same mentality of just tell yourself you just got one set and that's it. So where this idea spawned from was this concept of you should be able, or your goal should be able to do 100 air squats. And so just no weight, no nothing, 100 up and down. And I was like, boy, that's an awful lot of squats. And I don't know if I'm physically capable of doing that. So let's try to go through and let's build to be able to do this.
Mhm.
So my mentality was, again, let's go back to the exercise that you and I both love, the inverted leg press machine. And so I went through and I saw, hey, the inverted leg press machine is literally the sled that I have to push is half of my weight. So if I go through and I can do a true century set on that, then I'm halfway there to doing 100 air squats. So this will be a great way for me to train my legs for this massive endurance that is going to be required in order to do these air squats. And then we find all sorts of ways to talk ourselves through because the 100 sets, it's not about the weight, and you can get out of it pretty much at any time. You can summon up enough energy to get that one last push if you're ever going to get to a point where it's complete failure. So it's not so much a safety issue. It's all mental to be able to go through and push for 100 sets. And so maybe you go through and you don't rack the weight, but you're just keeping your legs locked out and for resting for as long as you need to, and then you go back into it. But what I found myself doing is, okay, let's get to 25. Okay, we got to 25. Now let's just get 25 more. Okay, now we're halfway there, but instead of counting to 50, I'm going through and I'm counting in smaller increments. And it's like, just get 10, just get 5, just get 10 more. Anything that I can do to trick myself into thinking, hey, no, we're not getting 100. We just got to get 10 more. Let's just get 5 more. And there are some times where I had to rest and it's like, okay, just get 2 more. But by going through, again, you're changing that mental energy.
Right.
So back when I was at the old gym, I was doing 5 days on, 2 days off because they were closed on the weekends. And so that gave me a little bit of time to rest. But so I'm going through and I'm working really heavy. And so this is when I'm kind of first getting started. And so I'm going through and I'm doing my bench press. And so bodybuilding is all about building the full physique. And so you're hitting the exercises from multiple angles in order to build like the full complete chest. So I'm going through and I'm doing, 3 sets of flat bench press. I'm doing 3 sets of incline bench press. I'm doing 3 sets of decline in press for a total of 9 different sets. So my idea that I've come up with here, I'm not saying you just do 1 set and you're out and you're done. Instead, what I'm asking you to do is to trade. And instead of doing 3 sets of, 3 sets of each muscle group, what I'm telling you to do is to just do 1 set per exercise. So instead of doing 3 exercises 3 times each, I'm asking you to do 9 exercises for just 1 time each. And it can be, so there's a bunch of different variations that you can go through and do, let's say on a lat pull down machine. Depending upon how you position your hands.
Front, back,
See, you've already got it.
I'm doing that. I'm doing that now. I started increasing the number of exercises I do, and adding them toward the total of the body part in terms of the sets I'm doing. But it's not 3-3-3 or 2-3-2. It's as many different exercises I can do to hit it from as many different angles as I can during the exercise. So we're on the same wavelength there. Yeah, I've been doing that recently, and I've been switching the workouts. So, for instance. On one day, I'll do my biceps and triceps, for example. And then on another day, my biceps will be with my back and my triceps will be with my chest. So I'll vary the orders in which I pair the antagonistic or push-pull type of things. And I find that helps a lot too. And it gets less boring also. My mind doesn't wander as much as I'm doing sets. And also, speaking of the mind, I learned, I relearned when we go to the Mexican restaurant. There's a Mexican restaurant that we go to all the time, and we love the Mexican food there. We love the people there. It's a great place to go and eat Mexican food and have a margarita or a pina colada or something occasionally. And some of the guys that were working there all of a sudden started looking really muscular. So I asked them what they were doing, and they said they were doing like 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and that's basically what they were doing. And their bodies had transformed in a small number of months, from like a regular non-training person's body to a bodybuilder's physique just by doing the basic exercises. So I started adding those into my workouts as well. So when I do chest, I'll use the hand grips, and I'll do some warm-up sets, and I'll use chairs to do push-ups at different angles, and then I'll do the kettlebells and use those to do the regular weight exercises. So I get a lot of different exercises that hit the chest from a lot of different angles, and I'm finding that I love doing that.
So, and again, this is where I'm fascinated by these, where we're all coming to these same conclusions, even though we're completely disconnected from one another. And so that's where I have to think that this theory has to hold true. But again, it's not a thing of you going in and just hitting one bench press and thinking you're going to look like Mike Menser. It's not going to work that way. But and so if people are like, well, how many different exercise variations, can there possibly be? You'd be surprised because again, barbell, dumbbell, machine press, free weight. I mean, so you could use cables. Yeah, I mean, so there's all these different variations that you're going to go through. And so again, it's just finding all those different ways to go through and target things. But just by going through, I do believe that by going through and changing your mindset of just telling yourself, hey, because I do think that you hold a little bit of energy in reserve if you know, hey, I've got to do 3 sets of these things. And I'm not talking about, like your warm-up set, but just because you're not going to give it everything you possibly can because you've got 2 other sets that you've got to get through. So it's about going through and changing that mental attitude. So maybe the one set or maybe the one set doesn't necessarily work for you, but find a way to go through and change that mental attitude to where, again, it's the same with doing that century set. It's going through and finding your way to fool your body into releasing its full potential. Because now I do think it's important. You do have to go through, you have to listen to your central nervous system. And then the other thing that's important, if you're going to go through and you're going to do 9 different exercises, these are 9 exercises that you need to be solid in, where it's like, hey, I've done this bench press 1,000 times. I know how to do this. It's not something that you want to go through and incorporate this with a brand new exercise that you've never done before, because it takes a little bit of time for you to teach your body exactly what you want it to do.
And you can use your memory. I do this a lot, or I do this if I don't have access to any type of equipment. But if you lifted weights at all, you know what things feel like. So if you're in a place without weights, you can use tension and remember what the certain poundages are like, and then pretend you're doing them. And you'd be surprised. You could get a good burn just through imagining that you're lifting a particular weight and doing a particular exercise, and just using your own mental resistance instead of an actual weight. And I've shared the story several times where I broke past the 300 barrier with a bench press because I was distracted and I was talking while I was putting the weights on. And I was never able to do the 300. I was always in the high 200s and I could do that with no problem. But 3 was a barrier too much to cross. But I was talking to somebody. I wasn't really watching what I was doing with the weights. And I did a set and I thought it was like in 270, whatever, what I thought it was. And instead, when I was taking the weights off, I was like, wait a second. And I pushed over 300. It was like 300 in 310s without realizing it. So I realized then the power of your own mind prevent you from moving forward. So I guess I had a fear or a concern or something in some part of me that led to my not being able to mentally cross the barrier. But as is true with all barriers that are crossed in sports, once I crossed the barrier, it was easy to do it. And
Right.
to do it. But until then, that barrier remained.
And so again, very important to go through and yes, find that balance to go through and push. You're better than what you think you are. And probably even more importantly, you're doing better than you think you are. I think there's so many people out there. We are our own harshest critics. And so that's where I want people to realize, again, sometimes just showing up to go through and put forth that effort to try. And even at the very least, it's the oddest thing. There are times where I'm tired and I'm sore and there's a lot of stuff going on in my life, but to be able to go through that gym is such a special place for me. That is my sacred space. That's because I can step in there and there are no problems that I experience in the world. And I think that's because when that weight is under tension, when we're under load, everything else gets really, really fuzzy and everything else gets really quiet. There's no more family problems. There's no more girl problems. There's no more work problems because it is lift or die.
Right.
And so again, I want people to be safe, but again, it is such a singular focus that
Hmm.
where it's just like, I have to get this weight lifted off of me. Everything else just falls away. And so you reach this point, this strange Zen. I don't know how to describe it properly, but it's just where it again, it's just you versus the weight,
Right.
and the weight does not care. Lift it or don't. There is no ego. You know, it will crush your ego because the weight is the weight. Either you lift it or you don't. It doesn't care one way or another. But that's in a very good way. And so, yes, by all means, I want people to be able to strive and go beyond what they think is possible. But so there are some days where it's like, man, it was tough for me to drag out of bed, but now it's become so routine. It's now just part of my lifestyle. And the oddest thing is, on the days when I least wanted to go, those are the days that I have some of the best workouts. It's my motivation was down, but then I get in there and I tried it. And look, there have been days, I'll admit, man, I tried and I didn't have it. And so, again, if you're playing Hercules Ryan Bingo, I'm going to shout out my Apple Watch here that I use. So I'm going through again for WrestleMania weekend. I knew I'm going to park my butt on the couch for an extended period of time to watch this show. Now, I mean, at the same time, I'm going around, I'm doing laundry during the pre-show. I'm listening
Right.
to it, but so I'm going to be involved. So it's like, I'm really going to get in here and I'm going to work. So that way, as my reward, you can sit on the couch and not feel guilty. And we're going to have pizza and it's going to be great and brownies and it's going to be great. We're this going to have a fun time. So I went through and I'm putting in, and that's when I started doing the John Cena attitude adjustments. And then by the time I got done, because my body was doing things that I wasn't used to, I was like, my totals were shooting up on my watch. And I had closed the rings and, put in all sorts of stuff because I'm doing stuff that my body's not used to. And so as a result, it's burning more calories. So you're going through and doing those things, going through and changing up your routine, even if it's simple as doing concentric and eccentric focus, slow down your reps. Go through, I mean, if you're used to doing an explosive lift, and then go through and let it slowly drop back down just by going through and making those little. So when we talk about tearing down a program, we're not talking about, or, changing things up. We're not talking about tearing it all the way down to the studs. We're just going through and making these little changes to go through and shock your muscles into learning something new, and then your body is scrambling to compensate. And again, I've got the data to prove it that, hey, my body was really working hard to go through and try to adapt to these changes that I'm forcing it to go through.
Back in the day, when we lived in Pennsylvania and I had a nonprofit organization, one of the things we used to do, in addition to giving away books and holding programs and things like that, was there was a president's fitness thing on the computer. So everyone who was involved, because again, it was Jason and the Argonauts, it was the heroic path, it was things like that. You had to be doing some sort of exercise. So whatever you did, you could do isometrics, isotonics, jumping jacks, whatever you did, weights. You could put it on the computer and it would calculate a lot of different things for you, make recommendations. So, we would use that to compare, again, not to establish a hierarchy, but to inspire each other. You know, that you had this score, now you have this score. And oh, yeah, well, I have this score. Oh, fantastic. What do you do to get that score? So it was a friendly competition, which again, you could imagine amongst ancient Greek heroes on a quest. So yeah, that is great. And it does add to the joy. John Cena has become a favorite of myself and my wife because he was in Peacemaker.
Yes.
And
And
that's how we got to really experience him. We'd seen him in things before, but in Peacemaker really shined. So we're big John Cena fans.
absolutely. And his commitment to Make a Wish is just tremendously inspiring. And so to combine that with the comment you were making about the Mexican restaurant. So what you'll find, and because I know we'll get closer on time, but what you'll find is that if you're getting through and you decide to start a program, what you find is that a lot of people, we all tend to be creatures of habit. And so I pretty much see the same people just about every day who are regularly showing up. And because I've got my schedule, they've got their schedule, and it's the Venn diagram where we overlap. And so you end up seeing the same people over and over again. And so there's one gentleman in there, and his English is a lot better than my Spanish. And so we would do the nonverbal, the head nods and the recognition, all that sort of stuff. And then we were getting ready to leave at one point, so we're both there, grabbing our gear at the same time. And so again, my Spanish is very minimal, but he called me amigo, and I was like, I know what that means, And so in the era that we're in right now, we need these communities more than ever. And the fact that he was willing to call me that gave me a sense of pride that, I'm someone that he can trust. And so we keep having these exchanges. And so I'm getting ready to leave, and it's him and a couple of his buddies. And so I cheat, and I get my phone, and I whip out Google, and I'm doing a translate real fast. And so I'm getting ready to leave, so I point at him, and I did the flex, and I was like, and I said fuerte, and they all see, and mucho fuerte, and they yeah, they gave me the good thumbs up. And so I was like, all right, yeah, I'm part of I'm invited to the cookout. So I was excited about that. And so again, I've been seeing this guy for I don't know how long. And sure enough, me and the family, we go to the Mexican restaurant, which is fantastic. And I walk in, and who's working there? And so I see, we make eye contact. It's amigo, and I was like, "Hey, man!" And he took care of us so great. And he was like, "Your family?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely." And so again, that community of people, what they want, I think you have to be in it in order to know. But once you get in there, man, everyone is, if they're doing it all right, everyone is rooting for each other's successes.
Right.
And so we're all these people coming from all these different walks of life, but it doesn't matter because the gym is that great equalizer and everyone who's in there is just they're trying to become a better version of themselves. And so when we come on here and talk, that's what I hope. That's what I hope people come away from, or come away with these conversations, is motivation to go through and improve. It's this strange dance that we have to do where we want improvement, but at the same time, you have to acknowledge all the hard work that you're already putting in.
Right.
And I'm still trying to find a way to balance that myself. I think it's one of the great struggles that I've had to deal with, but that's what I want for everyone, is just to become an elevated version of how they are right now.
And that is an admirable thing to want for everybody. And I wish more people wanted that, because I delight in the richness of humanity, the varieties of cultural and individual expression. And I like learning and seeing the world in different ways. And again, now I'm almost 70. I'm no longer looking for ultimate answers to anything. It's just a journey, and my perspective has shifted so many different times that I don't really look for, ultimate truth. It's just how can I see things a little bit differently? How can I see things in a healthier way? How can I see things in a happier way? And then just sharing through conversation the perspectives, and let other people try them on for size. If it works for them, great. I'm glad to have been of service. And if it doesn't work for them, great. Thanks for listening. Now we have a better understanding of where each other stands.
Absolutely. And I think if we could all embrace that kind of idea, the world would be a much better place. And I know that it's so strange for this. It's probably going to come out of left field for a lot of people to now, wait a minute. You understand all this because you picked up heavy weight and you put it back down? Yes, absolutely. I know it sounds very strange, but I think it's one of the best things that you can do to improve yourself physically, intellectually, socially, and emotionally. I do think it is the complete package. And if you think any sort of physical endeavor that you're doing, resistance training is the way to go through and improve it. And so going through and lifting those heavy weights, It does. It reveals who you are as a person. It challenges you and it inspires you to be better. And so that's what I'm hoping that everyone comes away from this is that's where they, yeah, okay, let's go lift those heavy weights. Let's make ourselves better people.
What he said. Now, Ryan, I'm waiting for you to publish all of your ideas in a book, and you've had a couple of websites where you presented them under your Fury and Strength, and you had the Phoenix Protocols, and I'm sure you've had other things as well. I'm waiting for you to come out with a book, so I'm waiting for an autographed copy of that book too. Uh,
It's we'll put it in the pipeline and because I've been promising this for a really long time. I am currently working on the outline for my next book. Whether or not he actually said it is kind of hard to say, but there's a quote attributed to Abraham Lincoln. So I can't guarantee that he actually said it. Is I think this internet thing's going to catch on. No, Abraham Lincoln, he's attributed with saying, if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. And so that's what I'm doing right now is I'm sharpening my axe. And I've been doing that for this next book that I'm going to do. I'm breaking out of my typical genre just to kind of to flex my creative muscles, as you will. So it's futuristic, it's sci-fi, it's robots and lasers and faraway planets. So that's what I'm working on. I'm having a lot of fun getting that thing developed. But once I get that done, I've got a few kernels for a few more book ideas, and we'll see. I'm going to continue to water them and see how they grow. But I do think, and so again, coming on here and talking with you, that's kind of my way of sharpening the axe. And I do think you're right that we're getting to a point where it's time for me to start compiling all this information and putting it together in a way. So when I do this, not if, but when I do this, years ago, I read a book from comedian Drew Carey, which was absolutely fantastic. It was called Dirty Jokes and Beer. And so it's a fantastic read. And as he said, it's you and me. We're sitting at the bar. I'm buying. I'm going to tell you stories, and we're both going to call in sick to work in the morning. And that stuck with me so much. And when you read the book, you could hear Drew's voice in his prose. I don't think he used a ghostwriter. I think it was really him. And so again, the same as you and me sitting down and having a protein shake, that's if I was going to write the book, that's the way I would do it. It's not a bunch of dry statistics and also not, telling people, hey, this is what you need to do. Just this is what I did, this is what worked for me. And to present it in such a way that your average reader can understand it. Because I do think that, hitting the gym, it's an intimidating thing for people, and no one wants to admit that they don't know what they don't know. And so to be able to present that in such a way that, regular people could understand it and apply it, I just have to make sure that I'm a good enough writer to be able to do that. But if I can, yeah, I think it's definitely something that I need to put in the pipeline.
And for those who are listening at home, Ryan also inspired me in another way. I had written a lot of stuff that appeared in like local magazines, and when I was a professional involved in human services, people that dedicated chapters to the things I was doing or had me write things. I wrote manuals for the places I worked, for the programs that I designed. But I wanted to be a published author on a larger scale. So Ryan was one of the people who suggested anthologies. And now I've been published in over 20 anthologies. I think it's like 25 or 24 anthologies. And one of them just came out this past week. Another one came out in November. The one in November was with a major publisher, the Llewellyn. So I'm a Llewellyn author now. Ryan contributed to the thoughts that just made me move ahead with that rather than thinking about it or wondering about it. Again, I want to say thank you. That's enriched my life greatly. And thank you for all your thoughts and ideas.
Absolutely. So I don't think it is not selfish, maybe self-serving. Okay. All right. But hey, okay. Drop a link. I mean, down below. I think that's what the kids say on the YouTube videos. Please drop a link to your books down below in the description of the YouTube video, so
There's
that way people can go and find your book.
I'm an Amazon author and a Good Links, Goodreads or Good Links or Good something. Well,
Goodreads, yeah.
Goodreads. Okay, I will do that on Facebook. And how can people get in touch with you now, and how can they hook into the larger worlds that you've created, both as an individual and as an author, taking people to other more exotic places?
How you promote me here on Facebook is probably, I'm sorry, not here on Facebook, whenever you talk about your shows, that's probably one of the best ways where they can go through and find me directly. I'm on some other social sites, but it's very quiet over there. Facebook is probably going to be my biggest public profile. But that, and then you can go through and do a search for Ryan Foley on Amazon, and you'll go through. I've got a store on there that goes through and lists pretty much most of my catalog that's currently available in print. With either myself publishing or with the other publishers that I've worked with. But yeah, Amazon.com, and how you promote me on Facebook is the absolute best way.
And Ryan also not only has written graphic novels about Greek mythology, but he's my favorite author of graphic novels of Greek mythology. So thanks again for that. And I look forward to our next conversation already. This was great. Thank you, Ryan.
I do as well. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Okay, be well, and everyone take care. Joyous journeys and amazing adventures.